Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into a truly fascinating concept drawn from some incredible recent analysis. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that our entire global economy, the way we trade, the way we resolve conflicts, how we distribute essential resources, is essentially just an operating system. And right now, that operating system is running on deeply, deeply outdated legacy code. It is crashing all around us. Today, we're exploring a detailed, hard-coded blueprint for a massive software upgrade. Okay, let's dive right in.
Think of this agenda as our installation menu, or our boot sequence. We've got 5 steps. 1. The scarcity system glitch. 2. A planetary OS reboot. 3. The Triple Helix architecture. 4. The peace-for-profit flywheel. And 5. The abundance reality.
Section 1. The scarcity system glitch. Diagnosing the legacy code.
To really understand why the system is crashing, we have to look at its baseline code. The source materials identify this as the scarcity mindset. Now, this isn't just some psychological quirk. It's not just human nature. It is the actual legacy code our world runs on. It's this baked-in structural belief that there just isn't enough food, energy, or safety to go around. And what happens when your entire global operating system runs on that logic? Well, it structurally guarantees zero-sum conflict and massive inefficiency. Because people are terrified there isn't enough, they hoard. And this fear-driven hoarding actually generates artificial scarcity. It's a self-fulfilling bug in the system. A perfect example of this glitch in action is the wealth concentration strategy known as buy, borrow, die. Here's how the legacy model handles capital. Individuals buy appreciating assets, right? Then they borrow against those assets tax-free to fund their lifestyles. When they eventually pass away, they use a rule called the stepped-up basis. Basically, this wipes the tax slate completely clean for their heirs. It literally legally erases generations of capital gains tax. So capital expands frictionlessly within these hereditary dynasties. But who absorbs the lost revenue? The public treasury. The tax burden is shoved entirely downward onto active labor. This is the terminal expression of the scarcity economic model. Productive assets remain permanently enclosed and hoarded at the very top, starving the rest of the system.
And this brings us to a massive, mind-bending paradigm shift. If the scarcity model, the hoarding, and all these resulting geopolitical conflicts are really just features of an outdated, poorly coded economic system, what if conflict is just a system glitch we can actually engineer our way out of?
Section 2. A planetary OS reboot. From analog patches to digital solutions.
The documents we're analyzing make a really compelling argument. We cannot fix digital global bugs with analog patches, like traditional diplomacy or foreign aid. It just doesn't work. We need a hard-coded planetary reboot. When you put the legacy code side by side with the new code, the contrast is stark. The old code is built on extractive ROI, zero-sum logic, and relying on these incredibly fragile paper contracts that inevitably fail. It's basically just scarcity management. But the new code? It's all about regenerative ROI. It completely abandons scarcity management and instead uses a profit motive to create abundance. Managing a dwindling pie is always going to lead to fighting, but incentivizing the endless creation of new value through asset-backed guarantees and a shared operating system, that makes conflict completely incompatible with the new code.
Section 3. The Triple Helix architecture. Hardware, software, and intelligence.
Imagine a DNA strand seamlessly integrated with heavy interlocking gears. That perfectly captures the triple helix of restoration. It's this brilliant blending of physical infrastructure, ethical software, and economic intelligence. You see, in that old scarcity model we just talked about, wisdom, community, and innovation are totally fragmented. They literally compete against one another for limited funding. But in this new architecture, they are woven together into a hard-coded system. The sources call this a BIOS for global prosperity. By directly linking community needs to technological innovation and guiding the whole thing with collective wisdom, every single part works in unison. It becomes a self-healing, self-improving global system.
To make this super dense engineering a bit more accessible, let's use a smartphone analogy. A phone needs hardware, an operating system, and a processor to run, right? Well, in this global reboot, the hardware is physical, future-proof infrastructure. We're talking renewable grids, autonomous logistics, Starlink nodes. The software is the moral OS. This is driven by a framework called PCRMI. Essentially, PCRMI creates verifiable, localized trust and covenantal accountability. Instead of distant, easily broken paper treaties, it mathematically guarantees that agreements are upheld. And finally, the intelligence layer. This utilizes predictive AI, like XAI and Grok, to efficiently guide resource allocation and optimize growth. Together, these three layers create the total operating stability you need for a brand new economy to actually function.
Section 4. The Peace-for-Profit Flywheel, Recoding Human Incentives.
Okay, so this is the true counter-model to the scarcity economy. It's the peace-for-profit flywheel. Unlike the old model where profit comes from hoarding and extracting, here, stability itself is what generates the profit. It works in 4 steps. Step 1, establish moral legitimacy. The new moral OS creates a predictable, rules-based environment, which drastically lowers the risk premium for investors. Because it's suddenly safer, we hit Step 2, attract capital. Massive investments pour into physical infrastructure in areas that used to be considered way too volatile. Step 3, local prosperity. This new infrastructure creates high-margin stability and advanced local jobs. And finally, Step 4, reinvestment. The profits aren't siphoned off to some offshore account, they are fed directly back into building self-sufficient communities. The end result? People fiercely protect what pays them. Former aid recipients become active, empowered asset holders. Resorting to conflict literally becomes economic suicide.
When you picture interlocking gears spinning together, you perfectly capture the fundamental rule of this flywheel: self-reinforcing momentum. As each stage feeds and accelerates the next, the entire system spins faster and gets substantially stronger. Stability generates exponentially higher margins than chaos ever could. And here's the genius part: bad actors are organically marginalized by the community itself, because any disruptor poses a direct, literal threat to the community's own financial assets. It recodes human incentives entirely from the ground up.
This brings us to an absolutely crucial takeaway, summarized perfectly by this quote from the source text. Listen to this. This is not a system predicated on altruism. It is a self-reinforcing logical framework that makes peace and stability the most profitable and therefore inevitable outcome. I love this because it emphasizes that this is not about charity at all. Peace is no longer some fragile diplomatic hope. It is treated as a hard financial asset. This is cold, hard systems engineering designed to transform peace into the most lucrative, secure market outcome possible. It completely neutralizes zero-sum extraction by simply making stability the most logical financial choice for everyone involved.
Section 5. The Abundance Reality, Activating the Hard-Coded Future. So what is the final output of this system reboot? It's a concrete transition into a resource-based economy, or RBE. The sources describe this as a parallel efficiency core. It utilizes physical tools like Arquit 18. These are self-sustaining modular habitats that can literally pull clean water right out of the atmosphere and generate their own energy. And it pairs that with syntropic agriculture, which mimics natural forest ecosystems to grow food abundantly without depleting the soil. Unlike the old scarcity model, which relies on restricting access to basic necessities to artificially drive up prices, this new model generates tangible abundance. It totally bypasses the old rules of zero-sum enclosure to directly optimize for basic human needs. We can even see this applied at the most granular, microscopic level. The sources highlight initiatives like the 400-calorie miracle bar. This acts as a tangible vehicle for humanitarian response. By starting with a person's most basic nutritional needs, literally fixing their cellular health, the system builds a totally stable foundation for larger community wealth. It completely replaces the fragile, scarcity-driven food supply chain with local resilience. By embedding the economics of abundance into something as fundamental as a daily nutrition bar, it builds physical health and economic wealth at the exact same time. It is literally biology acting as economics.
So let's step back for a second and look at the big picture here. The core takeaway from all these sources is that the geopolitical clockwork is aligning, and the choice right now is incredibly stark. We are being offered an open invitation to walk away from the extractive collapse and the hoarding of the legacy scarcity code, and instead install a system of guaranteed shared prosperity. The message is loud and clear. Stop reacting to the crashes of the old system, start leading the narrative of the new one, because the OS is live.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought, directly inspired by our dive into the Triple Helix architecture and the peace-for-profit flywheel. If peace is no longer just a fragile diplomatic hope, but is now engineered and hard-coded as the single most profitable and logical human strategy, are you ready to install the update? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the legacy code and keep learning.